Welcome, friends, to week 3 of the Nomad Intensive. In Matthew 16, Jesus, speaking to a crowd of people, he says, "You guys know how to interpret the signs of the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times." I believe that we live in a great time of opportunity. Everywhere I go around Norfolk, I meet hungry young people, people of all ages who are hungry for something new, whether it's to hear the gospel for the first time or whether it's to experience community in a new way. I feel like we've got an amazing opportunity to respond today. But as we looked at previously, Jesus said that the harvest is plentiful, it's the laborers who are few. That's why we're on a nomad journey. And at Nomad, we want to root what we do in scripture, in church tradition, but also in church history. We want to look at what God has done in previous generations so that we can keep in step with what God is doing today.
Hello, welcome to the Nomads Church Intensive. I am Dave Lloyd, I lead the Garden Network and I'm a mission developer in the Diocese of Norwich, and I'm on the oversight for Nomads, and it's great that you're here. This brief seminar, we're going to look at church history, we're going to look at how church might need to change in the future and what role you can play in that in the next 10 minutes. This is called Breaking the Jar. So there's a Sony PlayStation advert where scientists put fleas in a jam jar and the fleas jump out of the jam jar. The scientists put fleas in a jam jar, put the lid on the jam jar and leave it for 3 days. And when they come back and take the lid off the jam jar, the fleas do an interesting thing. They jump to the top of the jam jar but not out of the jam jar. In other words, they've learnt to accept the limits of the jam jar and they never jump out even though the lid has gone. And what's interesting is their offspring also do the same. So those fleas are effectively trapped there for the rest of their lives and for eternity. And that's the kind of picture of church history, of discipleship and formation over the years. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So there's a bishop, Bishop Mark Dyer, who said, every 500 years, the church feels compelled to hold a giant rummage sale. In other words, every 500 years through history, there's been some sort of major shift, a getting rid of stuff, a shifting of formation, a changing pattern of church. What we might say about that is that's like a sort of jam jar smashing moment. That if fleas have been jumping around in the jam jar in the same way for 500 years, suddenly there's a big shift. And it's like the jam jar smashed and the fleas go off in a different direction. So you have the early church in 70 AD. And it says in Acts that the early church, that the apostles were persecuted and they were scattered and they preached the word wherever they went. And so they took the gospel. It's like the jam jar was smashed straight away. And they went off in different directions, preaching the gospel wherever they went. And the church grew in that way. It met in homes, it met by the river, it met wherever, whenever, with whoever, however. And it grew rapidly. There was exponential growth, millions of people coming to faith in the first early years of the early church. And then in 321, you had the rise of Christendom. You had Holy Roman Emperor becoming... so Christianity was persecuted up to that stage, and then it became the sort of state religion, as it were. It became the thing to do. There was a sudden shift from being an underground movement to an overground movement. And Constantine, the Holy Roman Emperor, was a man of sort of faith and a man of war as well. He was a kind of brought these two, politics and religion, together. And what you saw there was the sort of established church beginning.